Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to check if I have people hearing me. Could somebody just say good evening from home so I know I've got people that are hearing me, please? Okay. Okay, Sandra, you can still hear me? Michelle, you can still hear me? I just changed something to make sure you were getting it. Okay, that's great. I don't know if Maggie's on yet. Um, she's coming on to answer any questions about regulation, so I know she's going to be on shortly. I'll just give her another minute and then we should see her appear. Great. So we have about 15 people on tonight. We had about 45 at noon, so I'm looking forward to having lots of questions, and hopefully we will be going to keep the discussion to around an hour, but I'm certainly prepared to go on longer. It's more that you would have to put up with hearing my voice versus and answering questions. I can see the typing in the chat, so the good news is I'll be able to see your questions as you raise them. I'm just going to give it another 2 minutes. I apologize, but I think it's important that I'm seeing people starting to add on. And I want to make sure that we have everyone added on. Okay. Oh my goodness, I'm seeing some nice homes. Okay, I'm going to ask that you, if you are on a home microphone, that you mute your mic, just to ensure that we have everybody that can hear and there's not a lot of feedback. We found at lunch today that there was significant amount of feedback, and I don't want that to occur tonight. So are you hearing me without feedback? I'm just waiting for Maggie to come on. Okay, I'm seeing some typing. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm just waiting for Maggie, and if I don't hear from her soon, we'll get started. Thank you for, okay, Maggie. Thank you for joining us tonight. We have I see about 18 people, and we may have more people join us as we go through the presentation, and I welcome you all. The purpose, as you know, is to continue to try and give you accurate, clear communication, and also to update you on any of the changes that are happening at the ACOT Council. I want to welcome you all. It's great to have you online. We're using this technology this time so that you can make sure we get everyone who wants to attend online. And the fact that then I will be able to see your questions as they come up, and I'm here to answer your questions. I think that's what becomes very critical at times like this. So we're going to actually talk about the vote of non-confidence a little bit, potential future changes to ACOT, and just about anything that comes up on your mind. I'm going to introduce things with a few comments, and then I'm going to open it to you. But before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge Martin Anderson's valuable role that he played, and the contribution to the council and ACOT as a whole. Welcome, Maggie. I actually got on tonight successfully. Maggie's now joining us. This is wonderful. So I was just saying I'd like to acknowledge Martin Anderson's valuable contribution to the council and to ACOT, and I want to thank him on behalf of all of us. We appreciate all of his efforts. And I also want to say that, you know, there has been some very interesting developments over the course of this since this started in the late fall. And I need to reassure people that we are really in this together. This is not about ACOT rebelling and changing the profession of occupational therapy. I've been in occupational therapy since 1973. It's almost scary when you think about it. I had a member email me after and say, and I've had this happen before, and say, you've been in OT longer than I've been alive. That kind of puts you into a different context in a very rapid moment. But it's we're in this together. The changes we're trying to make, the movement forward in any way we do, it's about us as a profession. We all want what's best for this profession. I'm a passionate OT. I always have been a passionate occupational therapist, and I've worked my entire life. I have worked, it's scary the number of years when you begin to add up since 1973. You know, and I think most of you are like that. You're working, you're raising kids, you have families, you have commitments to your profession, and that's what we're all about. We're a small profession, and we need all of us, and we need to be working together. And that's certainly the perspective I come from. I want to first talk about the vote of non-confidence, and Maggie can come in and talk about any of the issues around it. I think it's really important that you have clear information. I am confirming that, and you have seen it on your emails now, I am confirming that the registrar received 220 signatures, which called for a council non-confidence vote. You have seen that. It is under the Act. It is very clear the process that you need to go through, and it is open until March the 3rd. Maggie has also notified the government, and she can talk about that process a little bit. And so you have your opportunities to make your voices heard. Although this is a very serious time in our profession, this is the first time this has ever occurred under HPA. So it's a really interesting time in not only for HPA, the government, but for us. We want to ensure that our aims are that we have a due process of the vote is fully followed, that our memberships know that our services are seamless, that we will continue to do everything the college should be doing. Maggie is working very, very hard with the staff to ensure what's going on at the office is handled seamlessly. And we continue to put our work with ACOT forward. You've seen some of the changes. The last writings that I've done that came out after the council meeting to explain the motions. They've addressed many of the concerns that SAOT members had, and the fact that, and you have had as well. So what's been very, very important is that we are trying to address, we are hearing you loud and clear, and the communication processes we have used in the past may not have been the most effective, but we are moving forward. With this non-confidence vote, what could happen is 2/3 of the eligible voters, there would be a call for, if 2/3 vote to non-confidence with the council members, the council would be removed, and we would have 30 days where we would still be there while we organizes an election. And during that election, of course, we hope if there is an election, you all come forward. I mean, this is an organization that is there for the profession. It is about protection of the public. That's what we do. Very different mandate than SAOT. We need both of us there. But we are there, and we are very clearly under government legislation. And what we do is, okay, it should be there. Okay, can you hear me now, Maggie? Maggie? Can you hear me? Can somebody tell me if they can hear me? Yes, okay, some people can hear me, so thank you. If you can't hear me, please let me know at any point. It appears that something has happened, but it looks like we're on air. So if 2/3 of the eligible voters choose the non-confidence goes through, there will be an election within 30 days. The entire council will be replaced. And if not, if it does not pass, then we will continue on what is on the current electoral cycle, which has been held back. We have 3 councillors that need to be replaced. And with those 3 councillors being replaced, they will, that is a significant proportion of the council. We would then have the election. Those members come on in, although we bring them in at earlier meetings, they are officially elected for October 1st of 2017. Maggie, do you have anything to add? Am I cutting in and out, Sarah, or am I still there? I'm not seeing anything at my end. Stable connection. Okay, I've got people saying I'm fine. Okay, Maggie, do you have anything to add about the non-confidence vote?
By government, so they're not affected by the non-comp.
Pardon me? I'm sorry, I have lost you now, Maggie. Oh dear. Okay. Maggie's difficult to hear. You're cutting in and out now, so seems to be something going on here.
I was just saying that the members aren't affected by the non-confidence and okay.
Maggie, I just muted myself. I'll mute myself again if you want to repeat that and see if that makes a difference. Okay.
Wonderful to know that the public members aren't affected by the non-confidence vote as they're appointed. It's just our elected members.
So for your information, the council consists of 7 people. 2 would remain, 3 would be replaced, and the 2 members appointed by the government would remain. And so they are appointed. Yes, they are appointed. And so they have specific terms, and one of them will be leaving in April, and one of them will be leaving in October. We have no idea when they will be replaced, but they are a very valuable asset. We do know the government is making some changes which may impact the numbers. Maggie, do you want to try and talk about that? I'm not hearing Maggie, so I'm gonna talk about it. That's just the way we'll go. The 2 the government is looking at other governments in Quebec and Ontario who are looking at have looked at changes in the number of public members. There's been a move in some organizations to replace up to 75% of councils with public members. That's very significant. In other words, there'd be an increased voice of those that are public members and reduction of those on council. Now remember, that only applies to the council. The society is driven by a different set of, they're not driven under government legislation. So the role they play, which is very important, the role that they're playing in moving the profession forward in different ways is not affected. We are under legislation, and our role in anything we do is dictated by the fact that the public. Sorry. Okay, I think it was in reverse at lunch. Okay, so I would like to ask what the questions are. We know that, and you've seen in the email, we put on a Yeah, technology is very frustrating at times. We saw that in the last webinar. Or wasn't a webinar. We heard in the last meeting that that we couldn't use the telehealth system at the last minute. We tried to put in our system that the university does use, life size, and it couldn't take the capacity of interest. And of course, what you saw was the frustration of people who couldn't get in, and hence 2 more, because we want the same information going out to everyone across the province. This is a good one. We can, because we see your questions and respond to them. Unfortunately, we can't hear you do it. So when will that other meeting be posted? Because we changed technologies, we're working on getting it. The transcript of the one we had today earlier will be up very quickly. We're trying to get hold of the other transcripts. Because we use different technology at the very last minute, we did not know until just before noon on the day. It was 10:30 in the morning on the day, and the recording button was already hooked up across the province on telehealth. Because we couldn't use the telehealth, we're having difficulties with the recording, so we're still working on getting it to you. But as I say, the one at noon and the one tonight will be posted on the website. I've given Maggie permission to do that. I think that's really important that you have all the information. So, you know, the reality is, you know, we were very frustrated, as you were, some of you were, by the last town hall. We are there about public protection. We heard clearly the concerns that you had about changes, and we've responded to them. And you'll see on the last, from the minutes, and because we are using a Carver model, which dictates the kind of things we do, and it also dictates what you see. The minutes have always been posted, and it's basically motions. So what we have started to do, and you've seen the e-news coming out in more than one occasion, and the one directly after January 30th meeting was me on behalf of the council listing what the discussion had been. We want to make it very clear the changes we're making. We had heard earlier that the use of activities was not a good word. Occupation, the mission and vision were changed, right? They were changed before the January meeting. We had a special meeting to do that. That message, apparently, we wanted that message to get out. We reiterated it. We've also disbanded the committee that was going to work on the recreation therapy to look at it. And please remember, we were not committed. We have never been committed. We were there to talk about it, because sometimes it's easier to be at a place to talk. And I think that that's really important. We have not committed to anything. And Sandra, I want to make that clear. We have not. We didn't rescind the motion. We disbanded the committee. It has a similar implication at this point. But we're trying to maintain that we can be at the table when these discussions occurred. But we have, that committee is gone. There is a leadership committee has been put in its place. We're hoping to get the vision of where to go and how to go there from our members. That committee will have members from across the province on it. There's only one ACOT member and Maggie on it, so we will have our registrar, because she knows the legislation well, and we are moving forward in that way. And so with the issues that come up and how we deal with them will be advisory to council, and that's very clear. We also have, as you saw in those minutes, an advisory group to deal with newer practice issues around competency and the impact on the legislative process. We've had questions around diagnosis. We've had a group working on that long before this other issue. We had a group that were concerned about what was happening at AHS and potential term of diagnosis that some professions can do and other professions don't seem to have within their mandate, and ours is one of them. And so looking at those kind of issues. So we have created opportunities for members to give advice to council. And I think that's what becomes important. And I think every college, you know, as profession, you're quite right. As every profession joins HBA, every college has the opportunity to speak. We want it to be in the structural point of when they start to really think about, we don't know what the government's going to do. The government is the decider. We don't even know if they are going to look at recreation as needing protection of the public. it's so early. Those are the kind of things that they're having discussed, and we don't know what the mandate's going to be, and we don't know where they're going to take it. We do know that we want to be at tables to discuss these things around protection of the public. The reason for that very clearly is that as we look at professions that begin to do things that are similar, and they're not similar because they are not trained in any way, we were asked to do this because the government thought that we could contribute to the discussion, not that we would do it. And I think that has to be really clear. And we will be discussing, it will come up in other mandates. But, I have concerns about a lot of professions, including recreation. Recreation was very specific. They've been working very hard to get recognition as a profession because recognize the core group at their association recognizes how important it is that we protect the public. The government approached us because we've been under HPA for 10 years. We've done a really good job. And that's why we were approached in the first place. We have not spent $100,000 on the merger project to date. We are looking at a strategic plan. We are in an interesting process of looking at a strategic plan. We have not had, and Maggie seems to have been cut off, but we have, and that's just not true. We are spending money, like significant money, and that's close to the figure, on the strategic plan to look across at a number of things. And I'm going to get you that particular information. I have it written so that I'm not surprised that question's coming into place. It is first, we're looking at, the plan is including relentless focus on, and we will get these out, they're just at the edit stage with the consultant. This is our spending on a consultant because ACOT has not in 10 years had a strategic plan developed. We've been doing a lot of things. We've moved into the Carver model. It was Carver. We're now formalizing it to ensure we're following it. But the strategic plan, because of all the policies and things that would need to go around it, is where the money has been spent. It has not been on the RT, and that's very clear, and I can have Maggie speak to it. But just so you know, the plan includes, and these are the things that are in it, relentless focus on regulatory compliance, shared values development, what is the broader scope for college, and it's from progression from a collaborative partner with SAOT to strategic partner. How do we do that effectively? Leadership, how do we invest resources to keep us as leaders? I believe occupational therapists should be recognized everywhere. I'm sitting on a committee for SAOT, getting our name on government documents that are going, but that is not what I can do in ACOT. ACOT is different. ACOT provides a protection of the public, which doesn't allow me to do the same advocacy I can do when I'm sitting on a SAOT committee, and I'm doing both. And that's a hard place to think about. How are you doing, and how do you do that where you're in a different place as you're having these discussions? The other thing is protecting the public in line with the concept of professional excellence by ensuring OBs are accountable through regulation. They're aware, competent, ethical, and public service orientated. So we have to look at that. How do we do that to influence competency? Proactive leadership development for both the college and the board. We want to ensure that we are doing future gap capability studies, looking at how that is going to occur. What are the things that the college needs to be put into place? So those are the things that we have spent the money on, and I think that it's amazing. You give one person information, or you give out some information, and it seems to be moving that in a different direction. But the money we have spent is on an overall broad strategic plan. It is with consultants who do this for a living. It is not about recreation therapists. But thank you for the question. I think it's a really, really important question, and I'm glad you brought that one to the table. A merger idea to include recreation. What is the connection between ACOT and the faculty? It's a really sad place. I work for the faculty. I work for occupational therapy, and there seems to be an implication that that because of that, I do not speak for the faculty. I do not speak for even our department. I speak for the college. There are 2 recreation programs already in existence. One is at the University of Alberta. It's in the Faculty of Recreation and Physical Education and Recreation. They're madly updating, I can say that, updating their program to meet the standards of the Americans, because they want they're working very hard. They want their graduates to be credible. The other program is out of the University of Lethbridge. And the University of Lethbridge has received significant funding, both from the Conservative government and now the NDP. And they are partnering with Norquest College in Edmonton, which is an interesting thing because Norquest College is a different level of education. The University of Lethbridge recreation program will be, there will be an ability for graduates to move 2 years of Norquest, move to the U of L to complete their degree, and then they will have a baccalaureate in recreation therapy. Interesting, and they have a chair of recreation, et cetera, down there. The interesting part of that is those same students from Norquest could not be admitted to the U of A recreation program. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff out there. The reality is we don't have a relationship with the college. I don't represent our faculty on these discussions, and there are things going out. You know, that's a much broader discussion, but I can't imagine the physical therapy faculty of physical therapy and recreation. I know they're physical therapy, phys ed and recreation, wanting to just give up their programs. I don't see that happening. So there is a reality there, that it's because I sit here that I think some of that's happened, and I find that really sad. For me, I don't know how to dispel rumors that because I'm actively involved in ACOT, and I have to say in SAOT, I'm doing, as I say, committee work for them on provincial committees, so in mental health. So I'm just finding that very difficult. So no, I don't know what the agenda is, and it's not mine. I can assure you of that. I'm looking, so it does not seem that recreation therapy needs to work internally to standardize their education requirements prior. As I say, we don't know what the government's going to do. That's something we have no ability to tell you at this point. It is a government decision. It's not ours, and it certainly isn't all we are doing. And you know, I think we have a lot of concerns. I have a lot of concerns. Recreation therapy is one of them. I'm concerned about case management and social work. I'm concerned about a number of professions that appear to be doing or trying to do parts of the practice that is so unique to occupational therapy. And by unique, I mean, I think we are, and I've said this to many of you, if you've ever been a student of mine, I think OTs are born. I think we use a different lens. I think our lens is pretty spectacular. It views the world differently. It views our clients differently, and it's so holistic and compared to other professions. And we work well on teams. There's no question of that. But I'm equally concerned about other professions. The government has said that they're going to open the Act initially. HPA. It was supposed to be this year. It's going to looks like potentially next year. And with that, regulations can change, protected areas of practice can change, and I'm just saying we need to be at that table. And recreation is, you know, their association. I don't know what they're doing. I've met with them once, okay, and that and that's, you can look at my day timer. I mean, I keep hearing, have you met with them more? No, I haven't. Maggie hasn't. We've met with them, and we met with them in the context of the government once. And that was it. The government asked us in 2015, and it wasn't high on our agenda. My agenda is about how do we give this college prominence? What do we do? How can we sit at all of these tables to protect the public? Because that's a different mandate than SAOT has, who is advocating for the profession. And it is different. Oh, what, opening the Act? Maggie, are you in? so we can get Maggie to answer that because she's been working with the government. Maggie, are you in?
And I'm not sure if you can hear me, Liz, but just to make clear that the government hasn't decided either that recreation therapy needs regulation, and that's the first step that needs to be done.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So can you answer? Yeah. And I think
can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you well. And can you go into Michelle has, please explain.
So I'm not sure if my audio's working or not that well, Liz, but I might type it.
Okay. Can people hear Maggie now?
But I wanted people to know that the government has not even determined that recreational therapists need regulation yet, and that's the first step.
Okay, you can be heard. So if you want to talk a little bit about the act and opening the act and what that means.
Were you able to catch that, Liz?
Yeah, we just had somebody type that they can hear you. So if you
can you hear me?
Talk about opening that, yes, perfectly. So I'm going to go on mute so you can talk about what opening the act. Yes, we can hear you, Maggie. Maggie, are you there? Okay. Okay, Maggie's going to type her response about opening the act. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. RTs and OTs are totally different. Their skills, their education. There is no, I mean, when I looked at, I'm a member of ACOT, when I saw the questionnaire, do I think a BSc in rec therapy is the same as a master's in OT? No, absolutely not. But protection of the public is different from the professional world of lobbying for the profession that SAOT is doing. And until the government makes any decisions, this is a moot point. I mean, I'm not being cocky here. Please don't think that. It's just that there is a lot of movement in a lot of professions. They approached us because they thought we might have something to offer in terms of supporting them to become a profession. So we have never said we're going to take them on. We just haven't. And we do have, I'm not sure you can hear, but the government needs to, yes, and it's about opening the act. Michelle has said in Quebec, OTs have reserved practices unique to their profession. Can you talk about how our act works here, Maggie? I don't know why we're not hearing you tonight. I was hearing you well. Yeah, you know, as I say, as Maggie, I don't know, sorry about the issue we're having. Okay, here it comes. Yeah, they're not yet opening up the scheduler regs. Those are things that can be unique. And can you talk about the unique, where what we have that's unique to our profession in the act, in the regulations?
So what's unique in the schedule, that what's unique to OT, I'm not sure if people can hear me, Liz, can you hear me?
Yes.
Is that we also consider our researchers, educators, consultants, and administrators as engaged in the practice of OT, and that's unlike many professions who just have sort of the clinicians that are included in their statement of schedules. The other thing that I just want to mention too is there's 14 professions looking for homes under the HPA, and the other one that we're just watching closely is the psychotherapists. In Ontario, they have been granted the right of a college, and OTs have lost the privilege of practice in the area of psychotherapy.
And I guess that puts us back to when we look at the strategic plan and what we're trying to do is look at a number of these professions, because it's not just RT. There are a number of things starting to emerge very rapidly that can really impact. And if you attended, any of you attended the AHS OT conference this year, I was there. One of the OTs that was presenter is a psychotherapist from Ontario, and she had to fight to use her OT credentials. And that wasn't supposed to happen. So there's some really interesting moves, which is why I want the college to take the college to looking at the big picture across. But I think you have to take baby steps, and part of those baby steps is being at some of these initial versus and at under HPA, if it comes with rec therapy, if it comes with the psychotherapist, if it comes, of course, all the colleges have a chance to say yay or nay. But the reality is early discussions are hard to access. And I think it's really critical for small professions to be part of those early discussions. Because if we're not, I don't want us to walk over. I keep saying this, I am passionate about this profession. It's been the best, it's been a gift to me. And I want us to protect what we do well. And I think every client in this province deserves occupational therapy, whether patient, client, school kid. When they need it, we should be there. But it concerns me when we're starting to see some of the doors close with other professions that we are not at the table to discuss it. I'm going to give you an example from SAOT. The committee I sit, it's on SAOT. I was asked by Robin to sit on a mental health committee. It's a leadership group that's giving advice to that is now giving documents and trying to give alternative advice to Deputy Minister of Health, because we know mental health services in this province are very underserved. We also know that when they removed the mental health board, that services for illness and those living with mental illness dropped dramatically, and that when you compare services across from a financial perspective, although things are beginning and the NDPs are reacting to the fentanyl quite well, it's about generic services. So we've been together on this. I'm the only OT on this leadership committee. There are psychiatrists, nurses, social workers, psychologists, and that's the core group. And we prepared a document, and it was interesting to see the one group name. They were giving examples of people providing psychotherapy and psychodynamic kind of treatment in this province. And it was a rough copy that came back even after all our discussions, and they were using as examples of providers psychiatrists, general practitioners, nurses, social workers, and psychologists, and OT had been left. Fortunately, I'm not very quiet, and that's where I work in mental health. We are on that document, clearly listed as a provider, and it went to the Deputy Minister and will go up to the Minister's office. We need to be there. We're a small profession that gets easily impacted. We know what we do, but we need it to be out there, whether it's in protection of the public or advocacy. And I am passionate, absolutely passionate about it. Michelle, you were saying Quebec loss of cognitive process. They must have formal training. You know what? And it goes farther than that, which is why I think the college has to look at protection of the public and how we fit very clearly. If you look at the U.S., across some of the states, the funding through the private insurers has been lost for OTs doing anything in mental health. It's very frightening. So we're not just talking rec, we're talking about all these other things and how we position ourselves as a college in protection of the public, because that's the only thing we can do, and how we position ourselves to be at the discussion, in the early discussion, so we can have an impact on these things before they even come to the general group. Yes, it is about moving OT forward. Sandra, thank you. It is. We need to move this profession. We are the best profession. I practice, and I say this very quietly. Well, I don't, obviously, I'm not quiet. We have some non-muted people, I'm afraid. But we have, I practice as a psychologist for a number of years. I have the credential to do it. I was an OT first. And then I realized one day, everything I do, okay, I'm getting feedback from me now. Um, everything I do, I did through an OT lens. I actually dropped my memberships because I knew that what the clients needed from everything I did was the OT part. And it was being encouraged from where I worked in a major place here in Edmonton that I drop that credential and call myself just a psychologist. I made it wasn't even a difficult decision. And I argue that position in a lot of tables now. We look at the client from a holistic functional perspective. We are absolutely critical. And every member of the public, which is why I am now on ACOT, deserves the right to have a credible professional to provide the best service. But we need to be there and we need to be counted. Sandra, any discussion that we would have would be driven by you, the members. I'm answering that because of the fact that we now have developed, and it's there and it's in the minutes on the website, this leadership committee, and it's going to be driven by members. So I hope you're on it. And it may not. We're probably not going to. I cannot say that enough. We've heard you loud and clearly. We haven't continued those discussions. We haven't had any since the one I had in the fall. They haven't happened. Because we dealt with it in a different way, and we dealt with it by the motion that you can see that dealt with it, that we canceled the committee that was working on it. It's no longer exists. Yes, Helena. We want to, the leadership committee, and the leadership committee is to simply do this when these kind of issues come up, whether they are another profession, whether they are, and particularly the kinds of discussions we need to have at the government. We want a venue to have these kind of discussions with so the members can have it, bring advice to the council. So there's 9 members on the leadership. We have proposed 9 members. The committee has been accepted. 8 of them will be members from across the province. As these kind of issues, as in what recreation came up, we would have that discussion within ourselves, and that advice would be given to the council. So it's coming at it in a slightly different way, but it's the same thing. It's about how do we form leadership relationships? How do we influence the government through protection of the public, which is, as I say, different from the advocacy that ACOT can do. We are not using so far any resources to support rec therapy. We haven't. As I say, that first number I got, I was in shock. We've used all this money. No, we haven't. We've had, and as I say, we've had very little discussion, and so I'm just concerned that that's still floating around.
And maybe Liz can hear me, but I just want to discuss.
Oh, Maggie, you've gone out again. Okay, how are we choosing members? We did put in on what I wrote on the e-news. I asked for people to put their names forward. We'll be sending out another link to ask people to come forward. We want a representation from all practices and from across the province. It's got to represent who we are as a profession, and we're very diverse in this profession. But we have very, very dynamic people. I mean, the communication issue that came up in the fall obviously was a significant issue. I'm not making light of anything that's happened. This has been a terrible place to be. But the reality is we are working, we have been working very hard. This leadership committee will be providing the kind of advice, so that should not happen again. We have also, we're looking at we have an ad hoc, we've approved an ad hoc practice, kind of a practice advisory group. Because we're getting lots of questions that put Maggie in a position right now that's very difficult. Things like assisted suicide, diagnosis, and mental health. Those are huge issues that will impact this profession, and there's got to be a venue to talk about what does competence mean in terms of those practice. So we have divided the leadership issues from the competency issues, but we have formed these two groups of which they will be made up of members of you. It's the bottom line. It's of you. I think if this situation over RT has done anything, it has activated people from across this province, and I think that's a blessing. We've had difficulty filling committees. ACOT's had difficulty filling committees. I'm hoping that will never happen again. We are a vital, alive, very bright group of people that all need to be in this, and we need to be in it from both protection of the public and advocacy. And we all need to be there. It's just so important, and things are moving in health so fast. We're filling gaps. They're trying to move very quickly, and not all the decisions. The legislation is the only thing that moves slowly, and we know legislation moves very, very slowly. But where government funds programs, where they're funding money, they're throwing things at certain things, and we want to be there at the discussion, and that's what this is all about. Yes, all members are invited to apply.
And just to clarify, there'll be another call for both committees going out after the result then. Yeah, and we'll have another call going out after the non-confidence vote. The other thing, just in terms of resources, with the recreation therapists and funding that, what normally happens is if the government determines that they actually need regulation, then the government starts to work with both groups in terms of how they envision that to work. And if they are regulated with us, it's anticipated that their cost of membership for the first year would cover any costs needed to sort of regulate them. So we're not using resources, I guess, in that way to help them with regulation. They've been working on this for over 10 years.
And they haven't even gotten to the point the government has decided they need it. And I mean, that's part of the issue. I'm hoping that is clear. On the leadership committee, the members, there will be a meeting. We meet. One would hope that committee will meet on a monthly basis. It would be, we've done it because it's a provincial meeting. It will be using technology resources because it's just too costly to bring everybody in all the time. And it would certainly be at the need of the committee, because part of the thing is, as the issues come in, you need to be able to talk about them. How frequently, we recognize you're all very busy people, but on the other hand, we need that voice. And so at this point, because they're brand new, the committees will be making some of those decisions. The ad hoc advisory committee on practice, which we have, which has also been struck. We have looked at one meeting for them as they figure out how this should look in person, and then from there will be a report back to council on what you as members think this should look like. We hired a consultant to work on that group, who was an occupational therapist, because I think it's very important to be an occupational therapist, and she's external to the council. She's going to bring people together from across the province. And so both groups, they're meant to be hands-off. What's different is the leadership will have Maggie on as well as one council member. And the reason for that is because we can only work within the boundaries of legislation. And it's very important that we have that level of knowledge that Maggie provides on those kinds of discussions.
And I just wanted to sorry, answer Helena's question about other regulation options for rec therapy. The government at this time has decided that there will be no more colleges formed, and so they're really looking, like I say, for partnership with the 14 professions currently seeking regulation.
But they have said no is an option. So that's what we're going on. So the other thing is leadership. Yes, the committees will go ahead. They've already been formed as a result. And we don't know who else RT's having discussions with, but the two committees we've talked about already in ways of communicating differently with our members, getting advice from our members, are going to go ahead. They've been voted on. They're in place. We are going to be actively seeking members. One of the things in non-confidence when you look at the legislation is the business of the college must go on until you replace the people you have. If the non-confidence votes goes through, it's important that the work of the college, we have to guarantee that the government goes on. But we're not making any rash decisions. These decisions are responsive to what we've been hearing from members. Maggie, do you want to take the questions? Okay.
I think that the government has decided that many of our colleges are in trouble in terms of their finances, and so you need at least 1,000 members to be sustainable. And so unless you are able to demonstrate to them that you have the numbers to actually start a college, they're going to be looking for partnerships, Tamara.
And we can't actually say who they're looking with. We don't know. We were approached over one. We don't know where those other discussions are going, who they're approaching, how they're doing it. Yeah, we can suggest a partnership with different council. That's not a problem. The council minutes on the ACOT site. Yeah.
And Allison, if you would like to send me an email, I can send you the links to. Yeah, and if you are having troubles right now, under Perry's call to order, motions are the only thing recorded in council meetings. And if you are having difficulty finding them,
Oh, we lost Maggie again. So we will just email Maggie, and we can help you send the links. Right now, we are moving from Perry's. We're going to go back to Robert's rules. It allows us to take minutes in a different way. You also have seen, and I've done two of them now, one after the January 30th meeting, that where versus the e-news that Maggie sends out on legislative issues, you saw something coming from me on behalf of the council that explained the motions to you, what some of the discussion was behind them, and we intend to continue to do that. That's a really good. It's just. We should have thought of that before. The reality is we want to have good communication. I'm a communicator. I tell stories. That's what I do. That's how I work with people. And we are just finding different ways of communicating. We also are looking at we're looking at technology to have a discussion board on the ACOT website, which would allow for discussions to happen early on and on a continuous basis. The number of ACOT yes, we will be posting the ACOT, the ACOT, the ground roads, all the parts, the day-to-day parts, probably will not be posted. That's way too much information. It's just because Maggie's working on it, because this is an ongoing process. But the framework and everything else that's been approved will be posted. We have said that it's at our consultants. They're just tidying up some of the wording in it, in making sure there's no errors. And we said that would be posted before the end of February.
And I just wanted to clarify for Sandra. Sandra, you know, our complaints are probably stable. We get about 5 to 6 a year out of the 2,000 OTs that we have registered in the province. What we've been successful in doing is actually alternative complaint resolution. That's been very successful for us, I think, for the regulated members as well as the complainant. And of course, it's sustainable in terms of finances and reduction of our legal costs. So we've saved quite a bit of money in that area.
And that's been the money we've used, because we've had money, is the money we've used to develop an overall strategic plan. And that's where, as I say, the figure was floating around. It's not about RT, that there was none of that money was spent on that. This is about developing that overall vision and ensuring that we're doing the best we can in terms of regulating and protecting the public. And I read
And the other thing,
earlier, you see that.
And the other thing I should maybe make clear about regulation is what regulation does is it actually sets an education standard for a profession. It ensures that profession has to be engaged in some sort of continuing competency program. And it sets a standard of practice and a code of ethics. So already the government has 6 colleges that partner. I think the medical diagnostics license 6 different professional groups. And normally what would happen is that you would have yours, you know, OTs would have their education parameters set out, and then if we were to regulate other groups, they would have their parameters set out. We would have different restricted activities as well, and you can have similar codes of ethics and similar standards of practice. And so what regulation really does is it ensures that if Albertans go to see an OT, know that OT has a certain level of training and that they are bound by those standards of practice and code of ethics and can be removed from that profession if they don't abide by them. And that's really what the government is trying to, I think, do right now with these 14 groups, is determine how much of a risk they are to Albertans, and if in fact they are a risk, how are they going to regulate them so that when Albertans, your mom and dad or your children go to a rec therapist, that you can be assured that person is actually trained and bound by standards and codes.
The fee, that's interesting. Sandra, Maggie should answer that question. She's much better at this stuff.
And again, even if you regulate another group, Sandra, you know, we don't really know how many complaints they would or wouldn't have. You know, I'm not anticipating that they'd have more or less than us. We seem to be quite consistent. I think in the years that I've been here, we in fact maybe go up or down 1 or 2. But you're right, we just don't know how many complaints they would receive.
Is that helpful, Sandra? Do you want to add something on that? I think anything we do is a risk in terms of, but positioning our profession, I think, is critical. And as I say, I can't emphasize enough, and I think Maggie's done. And you know, when I heard earlier all this large figure of the money, it was on the strategic plan is where that money has been spent. We only had it because of the fact that we have not had major lawyer work, that kind of thing, because of the dispute resolution that we've been doing. But we do know that we could, and potentially in the next year, we could have major cases that have to be dealt with in a different way. I know Maggie's dealing with, I don't know what they are, but she is dealing with some difficult things right now. It doesn't come to us until we need to deal with it. The reality is that changes your financial picture. We can't predict. We have to be very conscious of what our financial picture is, how we deal with it, ensuring that we will always have the resources, because our mandate is to protect the public. And and those are very expensive hearings. If you go to a hearing, they are very, very expensive. And so we have to be always conscious of that kind of thing and how it influences how you plan your budgets, what kind of policies you have, all of those things. How it influences how you plan your budgets, what kind of policies you have, all of those things. I appreciate your comment, Michelle, and certainly a recommendation. Other comments? And Sandra, I do agree. RT is so different. It is. There is no comparison. But we're talking protection of the public. No, an RT is not an OT. Never will be. Can't be. Doesn't have the training to be. I have concerns when they call them therapists. I don't think they get enough of the therapy. I think I have a standard joke that I call them recreationists, because I think they do a really good job of recreation. But I struggle with the therapy part. And part of that is a discussion I'd like to be part of. And if you look at the American website, which they're trying to replicate, that's the standard they're moving to. They don't always call themselves therapists, interestingly enough. Interesting. Why?
So I just wanted to say, Ashley. Sorry, I just was going to confirm to Ashley that there's six colleges that are currently in partnerships. And we don't know who the government is partnering the other 14 with, or who's been asked or not asked. So, so I'm not sure, Sandra, if the nurses or physio has been asked, or the paramedics. I can tell you one interesting development legislation, and I'm never sure how much people are interested, because of course legislation and regulation is one of my passions. But it's interesting that in BC, the nurses are now coming together with the LPNs and nursing assistants and looking at forming one college instead of separate ones.
Yeah, and some of those colleges have more similarities. I don't even question that.
And with regards to the education of this, and some of them don't. So example, sorry, Liz, I was just going to say the paramedics regulate the EMTs as well as the EMTs, and they all have different levels of education. So you'll see in their regulation what they're set out. The same with the medical diagnostics that do 6 different professions. They each have a section for what's required, and the same with speech and the audiologist. So they recognize that each discipline has their own sort of level of education, and what they're trying to do, I think, is standardize those. So if you look at, our sister professions of physio and speech, we're all at a bachelor to master's level, and I think there's an understanding that if rec was ever to be regulated, that they would have to at least meet those minimal standards at a bachelor or master's at some point.
Yeah, we don't know, and Sandra, you bring up an interesting point. We don't know.
So again, Michelle, what it does is it just sets your level of education needed. It protects your title.
Maggie, you cut out again. Okay. It is about pressure, and you know what? At this point, I don't particularly want to partner with anybody. I want to be. What's interesting is when you look at what's happened in Britain now, they've merged to one very large college with all these separate things underneath. I know there is some governments looking at that. All the
Sorry, Liz. I was just saying that each of those have their own chips. The other thing is that physicians are.
Sorry, we've lost Maggie again. Is council in favor of partnering with RT? Council is not favored in a partnership with RT No, all we were saying is we wanted to be at the table when some of these professions come up. We were asked about RT, that is all. We have removed that committee. We didn't rescind the motion, it's a motion of record. We have rescinded the work around it. I'm waiting for Kirsten, she's on the, yeah. So, yeah, we looked at it, we felt we had dealt with it in a more effective way by disbanding the committee. It was a very clear action that said, we are not working on this, and developing the leadership committee that said, we need to bring all of these kinds of issues into a group of people across this province who are invested in occupational therapy and have a place to have these discussions. The motion doesn't have to move forward. The motion is just a motion of record. Under the rules, it doesn't be acted on. And the work of the motion was around the committee work, and the committee is gone. Yes, and the motion was just discuss it. That's all. That's all it's ever been, which is why partially it didn't get rescinded. We have disbanded the committee that was charged to do that. We are just talking about it. And all we're doing, we want to just be part of this discussion because I think it's important. We're a small profession. People don't know about us. When I can go to a room of physicians and they don't know they need an OT in mental health, and I do this, the GP, where we're dealing with some of the clinics across the province that the government's putting a lot of money into these primary care areas, and some of them don't understand they need an OT and why they need it. I want to be at every table we can possibly discuss OT, and protection of the public is one of them. ACOT does the advocacy. We need us all, and we need to be hitting it at every level in multiple ways to make sure our voice is well recognized. So no, we had never said we would take them on. That's just a myth out there. I'm trying to read. I see that we have some typing responses. Yes, yes, we have the revisions on in the building of some of the pillars of the strategic plan happening. We said by February we would be posting the core of the strategic plan. I read you out tonight the earlier things, what it focuses on, and I'll do it again, the relentless focus on regulatory compliance. There's prettier ways of saying this thing that we have our consultants working on, but it will be there, it will be posted, and all of you will have access. We are ensuring that the quality of what you see in terms of wording and things is there. I'm all for regulating OTAs. I have no problem with that. I think it's a different discussion, and I think it is a discussion that at some point I hope we have. It won't be in my time. Regardless of what the vote is, it will not be in my practice time. Legislation moves very, very slowly. Yeah, it would be nice. When I was in CIOT in 2000, and that was 2008, in my term, and before that, we had the discussion, even prior to that, when I was the Alberta rep on the board there, we were having the discussion of OT assistance and should we have them built into similar to the process as we have the examiner? And we had a whole group across the country that said, no, we don't want them. They'll take away our jobs, etc. We didn't have the discussion then. We stopped the discussion. They still exist. I personally, we have an OTA in our building, in our department. She's the best thing since sliced bread. She does all sorts of things and demonstrates why and the role of what assistants do and why they need to supervise occupational therapists. So you know what? All of these discussions take so long, and they're deep, they're intense, and they're emotional, because anything that impacts my profession as an occupational therapist or my practice, I want to talk about it. But I also want it to be talked about in a way that we can learn and figure it out as a profession. I don't, this what has happened in the last few months is so polarizing, and I am so concerned, and I'm concerned about my profession. And I will be an OT to the, well, I probably won't, because I'm going to retire in a couple of years. But the reality, I will be an OT to my dying breath, because that's what I do. That's who I am. And I want this profession to be seen everywhere. And that's what we're doing. The advocacy role in ACOT can only be around protection of the public. Legislation across the country varies from province to province. It is a provincial jurisdiction. And so it varies. The legislation that in BC and Ontario are very different from the ones that for OT and under Health Professions Act. In ACOT, all we can do is advocate within specific of protection of the public. That's why I say, when I use an example, I'm very clear in the mental health stuff I'm doing. That's the role I play, what I've done for ACOT, because I can talk about the benefits of the profession in that venue. When I talk to some of my, when we're talking to government, we talk in terms of protection of the public and why things need to be regulated, what the skill sets are in terms of what the Act says, and how we are protecting the public through the Act. So the advocacy role is very, very different. Hence, as I say, ACOT can obviously bring statistics about how good this is, what a difference it makes in a person's life, write briefs along those nature. We have to swing it from protection of the public and how we can influence, and that's the only way we can really influence. And it's hard to do that head switch. I do that. I have to do it, and I find it very difficult at times. I'm such an OT. I want to advocate and say we're the best. I can't do that. I have to swing the argument around protection of the public and legislation. Thank you, Gwen. As I say, none of us would do anything that put this profession in jeopardy. We all love this profession. I just am really concerned when I see, and you know what, I will be very honest here. I have more fear about the psychotherapists and the social workers than RTs. Social work in particular. I love my social work friends, and I work with social workers, but quite frankly, they're saying they're doing a lot of stuff that I do, and I know OTs do it better. And yet our voice, for some reason, is getting lost. And that's what this is all about. I want our voice to be heard from every venue that we can have. You know, it's been interesting in nursing to watch some of their literature coming out. They're talking about diversional therapy. They invented diversional therapy in mental health. Interesting. Who does diversional therapy? Who's doing group social work? I want to protect this profession, and I know that's what all of you want, and I think we have to work together. Thank you, Kirsten. Kirsten is an elected member from southern part of the province. Other comments? I'm seeing some typing. 3. I just don't know who they are. I appreciate your honesty, Sandra. I have no problem with that. I worry. I think there are so many good things the council has done. I worry about it, the instability if the non-confidence vote goes through. But you know what? People like you would come to the plate. And that's what it is. And I've said, and I don't mean this to sound like I'm joking, I'm not. I've said I'll have way more time with my grandkids if it happens. I spend a lot of time on ACOT, and I have been particularly since November. And I look forward to, we cannot do any more than we've done. And I hope, obviously I would like us to move forward. I think we're doing a lot of good things, and I'm concerned that one issue could do this. But it's one issue, it's a big issue. We've heard you loud and clear. Right, Michelle, you will be on it. We see this in writing. Any other last comments? I know you've been on for an hour and 15. Any comments, Maggie, you'd like to make? Well, thank you. I'm just part of an amazing profession. I've had a lot of opportunity to work with all of you, and the diversity of our opinion, it's okay. It's what it is. And I think in the end, as long as we all come together and believe in our profession, no matter what role we play in it, it will move us forward. And that's what this is all about. Thank you again. I look forward to further. This is part of the communication plan that we have already planned. It was more of these, the discussion on the web. No matter what happens, I'm hoping, whether it's the current council or a new council, that you continue the dialogue.
And Liz, maybe if I can just get you to mute yours.
Yep.
I just wanted people to know, like in terms of advocacy from a legislative perspective, what that means is that we want to be at the table to ensure that we're able to do the restricted activities that we've been granted. For example, in BC, they've now lost the ability to do barium swallows for feeding tests. We want to make sure that we're included in other legislation that is in Alberta. For example, the Solicitor General's capacity assessors. And we're waiting now for a change in one of the legislations where OTs, along with doctors and physicians, will now be considered decision makers on whether or not people are able to leave hospital. And that is working its way through the process. So those are ways that I think the college advocates on behalf of the profession while ensuring Albertans receive competent care, because we're skilled and we're educated in those areas. So that's different than ACOT, who's sort of your voice. What we advocate to the government is we have the skills to do this. We should be included in those pieces of legislation. So I also encourage you to be looking at the new website the government has on board agencies and commissions, because when they do make the changes in that legislation, it would be great to have OTs applying for those positions as decision makers. And if anybody has any other questions or anything else, always feel free to call me. I'm happy to answer any questions at all.
You know, it's the same. I mean, we have learned a lot about communication over the last while, and I think it has come a long way. We said we needed to change communication, and we said that when I first came on the board. We're working on multiple ways of doing that, and as I say, I think it's a good thing. No matter what happens, it's a good thing. So I think we will draw this to a close unless there's any other final thoughts. And I'm looking for the typing if there are any other final thoughts. And if not, I thank you once again for attending.
Oh, sorry, Liz, maybe I just have one more thing to say. I just want people to be aware that like I said, the psychotherapists are looking for a college and a home as well. And that's something that we're, again, keeping our eyes on because we don't want OTs to be locked out of the ability to practice in that area.
Maggie, I think you've got a coffee date tomorrow, if you have time. I think you've got a coffee date tomorrow, if you have time.
Mhm.
I'll leave you two to sort it out. But in the meantime, unless Maggie, you have something to add, I think we'll bring tonight to a closure. Good night, everybody. Thank you very much for participating. This really is about our profession, and I think it's a very critical discussion. So thanks very much. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. I intend to go home and have some supper now. Good night. Bon appetit.
Did you want to end the session, Liz, or do you want me to end it?
I can end it. Okay, there we go.
Thank you.
Thank you.